It's official. Former Islanders prospect Ruslan Iskhakov is signed with the KHL. We'll talk about the impact on both the Islanders and the Bridgeport Islanders. All that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We have a busy show ahead of us today, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can email the show at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. During the offseason, that means hirings, firings, trade rumors, the draft, free agency. If it's happening to the Islanders, we'll have it for you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. So it's official. We did report earlier that a Russian-based hockey website indicated that Islanders prospect Ruslan Iskhakov was going to sign with CSKA Moscow of the KHL, and that today was confirmed. So even though the Islanders did qualify Iskhakov and basically kept his NHL rights, he is not going to be with the Islanders organization this season at all. And essentially, by making that qualified offer, the Islanders will hold on to his rights until he turns 27. Now, he will turn 24 later this month. So basically for 3 more years or two plus more years, a little more than 2 years, the New York Islanders will retain his NHL rights. Now, you may say big deal. We don't know the length of the deal he signed in the KHL, number one. And number two, what may be more important is you could package the rights, the NHL rights to Ruslan Iskhakov to a different team as a throw-in or a sweetener to the deal that, could be made any point in the next couple of years. And, maybe that means if you give them the rights to Iskhakov that you don't have to throw in a draft pick to sweeten a deal. Or maybe it's as simple as, okay, we wanted a second-round pick. You can give us a third or a fourth or a sixth or, whatever the case may be. It could help the Islanders with either a salary retention or a draft pick sweetener. There are a number of factors that the rights to Iskhakov could help. And look, if he goes and really plays well in the KHL, the Islanders could always re-sign him if he's willing to come back. But from an Islanders standpoint, again, to me, the biggest thing is this. This is another high draft pick, Iskhakov, second-round pick back in 2018, that ends up not developing into an NHL player for the Islanders. And let's face it, the draft and develop aspect of this team it needs improvement right now. Because I want to say this off the top. Size, when it comes to Ruslan Iskhakov, is not part of the problem here. and I'll explain why. If you thought 5'8", 170 pounds is too small, then why did you draft Iskhakov in the second round? Clearly, they knew his height and they knew his size when they selected him in the draft. So what do? I mean, you can't use that as an excuse. You know the guy was not going to be the next Cal Clutterbuck. That was not the style of player and the size of player that you were going to be getting. So you can't say, oh, the guy's too small. Now, here's essentially what happened. There are really only two choices if you look at this from an honest perspective. Either the Islanders made a mistake in drafting Iskhakov because he just wasn't good enough to make the NHL, or he had the raw talent and ability, but they didn't develop him properly. And essentially, I don't blame Iskhakov for heading back to Russia. He and his agent probably asked Lou Lamoriello after the season ended whether or not he's in the team's plans and whether or not he was likely to get a roster spot in the NHL with a regular role this coming season. And the answer was probably, hey, no guarantees. You've got to earn it. All well and good. But I think when they added Maxim Tsiplakov as a free agent, the writing was kind of on the wall for Iskhakov. Between that and the Islanders' lack of cap space to sign him, you really had a situation where he had nothing left to prove at Bridgeport. He played 2 seasons in the AHL, was an all-star both years, remarkably identical statistics. 69 games in each season, 51 points and 50 points. I mean, you can't get any closer than that. 17 goals, 51 points in 2022-2023, 18 goals and 50 points in 2023-2024. He was last year and the year before the best offensive player on the Bridgeport Islanders. And we'll talk more about that in our next segment. But essentially, either Iskhakov, they made a mistake in selecting him, or they just didn't give him the tools he needed to develop. And look, this happens. Even the best NHL teams are really only going to hit at 50% of their high draft picks. It's not the same as the NFL or the NBA where you draft a kid and he's playing and likely starting right away. You draft him in 2020, in 2018, and in 2018, 2019, he's part of your team and playing. That's not how it goes. Iskhakov, since he was drafted by the Islanders, played at the University of Connecticut. He played a year in Finland, a year in Germany, and then came back for 2 seasons in Bridgeport. So, this issue becomes, did the Islanders give Iskhakov a fair shot to make the NHL? And did they develop him well enough? Did they coach him up? Did they work on the problems in his game? And obviously, the player can be responsible for that failure as well. Maybe he didn't work hard enough on what he does when he doesn't have the puck. A smaller player has to play a certain way to be successful in the National Hockey League. And it's entirely possible that the coaches said to Iskhakov, this is what I need you to do. And he never either was willing or able to do that. There are a lot of variables here, but the bottom line becomes, here is a second-round draft pick by the New York Islanders who is, played exactly 2 games on the island, 1 in the playoffs, 1 in the regular season, and never really developed into a solid NHL player. And if you go through the 5 picks that the Islanders had in the 2018 draft, the top 5 picks. Number 1 that year, Oliver Wahlstrom. He's kind of on his way off the island, most likely. Noah Dobson, your second first-round pick, he has really panned out. Then you had 2 second-round picks. Defenseman Bodie Wild, he's gone. Refused to take the COVID shot and has not ever really come back to the Islanders organization. Not playing at a very high level of hockey right now. Not going to be an NHL player. Never played a game. The other second-round pick was Iskhakov. He played 1 game in the regular season, 1 game in the playoffs. And then your third-round pick was Jakub Skarek, the goalie, who, again, increasingly not looking like an NHL prospect and has yet to play a game in the NHL. I would have to describe him as a very average AHL goalie as of right now, and I would love for him to prove me wrong and just go out there and, take names. But, again, he's 24 and will be 25 in November. So, again, the Islanders draft picks, they got to do a better job of draft and develop, especially when you have an organization like the Islanders that is unable to sign and has never signed a truly elite unrestricted free agent since the cap came into existence in 2005, 2006. So it is disappointing to see Ruslan Iskhakov head to Russia. Do I think he was the next Mike Bossy or Marcel Dion, to name a smaller player who was extremely effective? I'm not saying that, but it is disappointing to see a second-round draft pick who only played a couple of games and only played like 6 minutes in each of those games to be heading out without delivering on any of the promise that he showed over time. All right, we've got a lot more to get to. We have the home opener for Bridgeport, plus we're going to discuss how does Bridgeport deal with the loss of Iskhakov. We'll have that, plus a little talk about an Islanders summer league. There's a summer league that the Islanders some players will be participating in. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who was with the Islanders for part of their first season, and he is the oldest ever Islanders player. His birthday was the first out of all the players who ever suited up for the Islanders. Let's see if you can guess who that is. And a little extra hint, he was a former Ranger. All that and more still coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Ruslan Iskhakov led the New York Islanders in scoring the last couple of years. And we now need to figure out how does Bridgeport, a team that already struggled mightily to score last year, how do they handle the loss of their best offensive player? Well, we do know the Islanders brought in a couple of players in Frederick Karlstrom and Mark Gatcombe. Karlstrom is the one who has a little more offensive juice. We'll see whether or not he is able to pick up some of the slack. But the main players who I think are going to have to come up big for Bridgeport this year, well, Matthew Maggio has got to be at the top of this list. He had 16 goals, which was second on Bridgeport. Again, Iskhakov had 18, only 11 assists, so 27 points in 61 games. It is time for Maggio to prove, like Iskhakov before him, that he, one more really solid season from Maggio in Bridgeport, and he can show, hey, I got nothing left to prove at the AHL level. And this may even happen mid-season, but, hey, call me up. Call me up. So we'll see. He's only 21, and we'll see whether or not he can raise his game a little bit and take it to the next level. Obviously, another player who we've discussed before, William Dufour. A dominant player in the Q in juniors, but still needs a little bit of work as far as his skating is concerned. Now, he did improve a bit, but still needs a little bit of work. 15 goals, 10 assists in 55 games, but boy, was he better late in the season for Bridgeport last season than he was earlier in the campaign. He's also 22, and, he's got a really good shot. And if he takes his game to the next level and, let's say, gets past the 20-goal mark, maybe even closer to 25, you're talking about someone who can really take away some of the sting of losing Ruslan Iskhakov at Bridgeport. One other player who I think, only played a little bit with Bridgeport. He played 12 games with them last year, had 4 goals and 3 assists. And that's Alex Jeffries. And, he finished college at Merrimack. So he's done with that. He's also 22, former 4th-round pick from 2020. And, he is considered one of the Islanders' better offensive prospects. I mean, now Cole Yzerman has sort of blown him away in that category. But Yzerman is going to play at BU this fall, so he can't be at Bridgeport. But realistically, getting more from Jeffries, who I think is a little bit more polished in his game than Maggio and Dufour as far as his all-around game is concerned. To me, that is a positive, and hopefully it is something that the Bridgeport Islanders will benefit from. And again, when you're dealing with an AHL team, you're always walking that line between you want to win at the AHL level and you want to develop players. Last year, the Islanders kind of struggled to do both. And it is time. It is most definitely time for Bridgeport, I think, to concentrate more on player development right now. I mean, if you do the player development thing well, winning will come. You got to have that right mix with a few AHL veterans, but I think they added a few and have a few. But the prospect pool, it needs to be improved. It needs to be better. And the Islanders need to do a better job as an organization. And I'm not going to sit there and point fingers at any one person or group, but as an organization from top to bottom, scouting, coaching, having a prospects camp, all of these things. The Islanders need to do a better job of taking the players they draft and building them up into NHL players. And hopefully, after actually using all their draft picks this year, that will speed along that process. One other note, by the way, for the Bridgeport Islanders, they have announced their home opener for the season. It'll be Saturday, October 12th, so 2 days after the Islanders season open, the NHL Islanders, where Bridgeport will host the Providence Bruins. So mark your calendars for that. And they also have home dates, again, of November 23rd, January 18th, February 15th, March 8th, and March 22nd. So we know those are home dates for Bridgeport, and we are looking forward to getting the full AHL schedule. And we will pass along a little bit more about that once it comes out, and we'll link in the show notes to it. So if you're interested in attending a game at Bridgeport and seeing some of the Islanders prospects there, we'll have it for you. All right, we've got more to get to. There is a summer league based in Minnesota. At least 5 Islanders are participating in it. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, our Islanders birthday of the day, all that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. So there's a league based in Minnesota that is designed to keep hockey players, NHL hockey players, in shape and sort of in the hockey groove over the off season. And it's called the Beauty League, DA Beauty League. And basically the Islanders have 4 NHL players and a couple of AHL players who are still affiliated with the Islanders there. Now, these games are a little different. They don't tend to be physical. There's not a lot of hitting. It's 4-on-4 hockey. You play 2 23-minute halves. It's a high-scoring league. It's kind of like a pickup league for NHL and AHL caliber players. And there are 4 players on the Islanders roster who have been, playing for years on it. And there's a couple of AHL Islanders as well. So Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, Hudson Fasching, and Mike Riley, they have been multi-year contributors from Bridgeport. You got Seth Helgeson and Dennis Chalowski. They are also players who have participated for a long time. And you got some former Islanders out there like, Zach Parise, although he's probably retired now, Aaron Ness, and Nick Leddy. So Brock Nelson was named the captain of Team Anderson. And among other players that are on that team, he drafted Mike Riley. Anders Lee is on a different team, Team Tria. And Fasching and Helgeson are on Team Walsner. Dennis Chalowski on Team Element. And by the way, Brock Nelson's team is Team Anderson. And these guys are playing for the John Scott Cup, named after, of course, the player who was famously voted into the 2016 All-Star game by the fans, despite playing, an enforcer's role and just not playing a lot of minutes. So you can stream these games, by the way. If you Google it, you can stream the Beauty League's games. And yesterday was the first game. And, not every player plays in every game. It's not the most formal thing in the world. But if you are hungering for hockey and you want to see some, players that compete in a fun little tournament. The games go through July and into August. And, basically it can fill your hockey hunger if you want to watch a little pickup hockey game. So wishing all the Islanders players luck, and obviously, most importantly, hopefully no one gets hurt. That's always the biggest concern. But it'll be fun to watch. Certainly if you're hungering for hockey in July and August. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today would have been, believe it or not, the 92nd birthday of former Islanders forward Ron Stewart, a native of Calgary, Alberta, broke into the NHL in 1952 with the Toronto Maple Leafs, won 3 cups with the Leafs, later played for the Bruins, the Blues, the Rangers, the Canucks, the Rangers again, and then the Islanders picked him up in the 1972-73 season. He played 22 games for the Islanders in that first year, 2 goals, 4 points, 4 penalty minutes. Ron Stewart, really a penalty killer and defensive forward, never was a big goal scorer, had a couple of 20-goal seasons in the NHL, but never more than 21 in any given season. And, he gave the Islanders, who in their expansion year, they were a very young roster, a little veteran experience and leadership. One of his best games as an Islander, November 25th, 1972, the Islanders visiting the Igloo in Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. Billy Smith, the goalie for the Islanders. Jim Rutherford, the future NHL GM, the goalie for the Penguins. And the Penguins jumped off. All the scoring in this game came in the first period. And the Penguins got 2 goals from Greg Polis, 1 on the power play, to take an early 2-0 lead, but the Islanders bounced back. Jermaine Gagnon getting a goal on the power play midway through the first period to make it 2-1. And then our Islanders birthday of the day, Ron Stewart getting his 2nd goal of the year, Ed Westfall, the captain, and Dave Hudson with the assist. That goal came with just 11 seconds left in the first period, and the game ended in a 2-2 tie. Islanders outshot in this one 32-19, but Billy Smith made 30 saves to earn the win. For Ron Stewart, our Islanders birthday of the day, he had the goal. He was a -1, and he did score on his only shot on goal of the game. And the Islanders and the Penguins skating to a 2-2 tie. And yeah, this was only the 2nd tie in New York Islanders history. And the tie improved the Islanders' record. Boy, that expansion year was rough. The tie improved their record to 3-14-2 on that inaugural season. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, again, tomorrow on the show, we'll have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. We will also, again, throughout the offseason, we'll focus more on some draft picks and some prospects and the overall Islanders prospect pool. So stay with us, and we'll get to that on a day-by-day basis. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.